My name's Michael Balderstone. I'm President of the Hemp Embassy. So it's my total pleasure to open the Hemposium, and Kathleen give me this moment. So it's our 26th Mardi Gras, and yesterday we were reflecting a bit on the change. So I remember the early Mardi Grasses. We had one cop in Nimbin, and hippies put little blankets out on the street with prices next to their buds, and it was so casual and so open and so no drama, except for the drinking. And as Mardi Gras grew and got really popular, we got these huge crowds, but everyone was getting pissed, it was all over the street, and the rubbish the next day, and the fights in the middle of the night were full on. So, of course, the cops move in. And then we got the riot squad, maybe 10 years ago, and it was quite full on, and, they came the week before and took away any potential missiles, like it was practice for a real riot, I reckon. And we banned glass in town, so any drinking had to be out of a can or a plastic cup or whatever, because glass was everywhere. And the cops really have focused on the drinking and make people tip out, because the main street of Nimbin is an alcohol-free zone, make people tip out their drinks. And it completely changed the vibe of Mardi Gras, really, getting on top of the alcohol. It was interesting, I found. And now, of course, we've got ice, we've got whatever, and all sorts of stuff. And I listen to myself, because I've been doing the same raves for so long. They've got to be boring for people. But the things that I keep saying, and I guess my thinking ends up as, we've got to separate cannabis from all the other illegal drugs. It's so totally different. It's a dried herb, a natural thing. Everything else is processed, or just chemical mixes nowadays. All the coke is processed, the smack is processed, and they're the three big plants that are the great pain relievers in nature: cannabis, coca plant, and the opium poppy. So, it's really simple for me. I get sick of people saying, oh, it's so complicated, end the war on drugs, oh, that's really complicated. It's just, it's just business. It was all about money and capitalism and controlling the pain relief empire. And pain relief, from what I've seen in Nimbin, people sell their house. People just change their whole life, sell everything to get pain-free. Because I figure in the end, we just want to feel good. And good and God come from the same root, which is by gad. I like that, gather, together, they all come from that root. So it's all about feeling good, I reckon, and how that became a criminal matter is just about money and greed. It should be, everyone should get full assistance to feel good and enjoy their life. It's completely a health matter, in my thinking. So I just think the whole Richard Di Natale's onto it. The drug wars failed. It really is a health issue, drugs. He's a doctor, he should know. And the way we've gone about it is all because of money. The pharmaceutical industry controls pain relief. They've made illegal all the best plants to do that, and you control the empire. And then we could start talking about wood chip and the cotton industry and all. Hemp seed oil is just awesome oil compared to canola we're growing now, full of chemicals. So it's probably the most useful plant on the planet, from what I can see. And that's after 30 years reading about it and realising it's just money. There's a great book in the Hemp Embassy, and I'd recommend you to read, by Johann Hari, called Chasing the Scream, about how prohibition came about, how we ended up where we are now, and why is Australia so retarded on the drug laws? It's like, I'm not sure. We're really rich, so we can afford to have lots of laws and employ lots of people, because jobs are God. So we've got all these people chasing silly little things, I reckon. Like the health regulations at Mardi Gras for food stalls are insane. Honestly, it's just like councils have lost the plot. So it's part of being a really wealthy country. We can afford to do all this policing. But also, we grow more than half the legal opium. So we're really fussy about keeping our agreement with the United Nations, I think, but that's bullshit too. You know, other countries are game for it. We've got politicians who I think are weak-willed, and probably the more dominant, the most persuasive people in the whole debate is the public servants who work for... The health minister changes, but the health department officials stay the same. And Lucy Haslam tells me that they are just fully lobbied by the pharmaceutical industry so hard. So the other thing I keep telling people is talk to your local politician. Make an appointment with your local member of parliament and go and talk to them. They have to give you an appointment. You know, give them your best rave on about cannabis, on medical cannabis if it has to be. Just education is what's going to change people. And politicians have got such a pile of shit to get through. You know, it's hard to get it on the agenda. And we're never going to get lots of people at cannabis law reform rallies. It's like putting your hand up, yeah, I'm a criminal, come and get me. So in Nimbin we can do that, unemployed hippies like me, I got no job to lose. So it's a big thing. We will not get a protest. I reckon there's 80% of the population would support changing the cannabis laws, but they're not going to come out in the street and they're not going to put their hand up because you do get a knock on the door or you do get targeted or, you know, whatever. So talking to politicians is what I'm suggesting people do. And let's teach them the difference between cannabis and the other illegal drugs is massive. Anyway, enough. I could rave on all day. Julie, I heard, did this fantastic talk yesterday. She's the co-owner of SKUNK Magazine. Is that right, Julie?
Yes.
I've got all her notes here. I could do her speech, sort of. But anyway, I so appreciate her coming out, and Asia May, and Dr. David Allen is sitting back there. I can see him. And Dennis and Adela, who have come from POW 420. They're all going to be talking today, I think, these people. Totally listen to them. They know what's going on. California's had legal medical pot since 1996. That's 22 years. It's pathetic that we haven't been able to do something more or better, because we've seen clearly it's a win-win for everybody. So I love that these guys have come out to share their experience, and they've already realised we've got something great here, which is community. You know, Prohibition's done two good things I've worked out. Pushed us all together to make a little band of criminals that aren't really criminals. So we've got this great community, and it's made me a safe driver, because if I'm carrying weed, I never want to be picked up by the cops. Hey, I really welcome Julie.
Top secret ideas here, Michael. And you're right. Michael is exactly right. You guys are evidence of a renaissance here. You guys are doing very many things right, but still very inhibited with cannabis prohibition. And just one note on what he said, California, I'm Californian born and raised, and California is still rife with corruption and greed. So with that being said, I'd love to share a little bit about SKUNK Magazine and its focus, its history a little bit, and then tell you a little bit about what I'm very passionate about in terms of being a woman of purpose. And attempting to do good while here. SKUNK Magazine is almost 14 years old, and it is a magazine based out of Montreal, but has reach in print all over North America. We have 5,000 doors across the US with Barnes & Nobles and magazine retailers and head shops, just to give you an idea of reach. And we have 1,000 doors up in Canada, various different sellers and strategic partners in the industry. So you really have a good reach over North America. And then globally, we have the Global Online Magazine. And we are able to reach people globally. And from relatively early on, at least about 12 years in, SKUNK became very devoted to organics and sustainability, and showing farmers globally how to have clean growing practices, solutions, a lot of hands-on ideas, a lot of rich, meaningful content. I do have magazines up here. They're open for you to take during the talk to just kind of peruse. Please put them back at the end, though. I was ready to bring hundreds and hundreds, but because of prohibition in Australia, I only felt safe bringing in 15. Luckily, they didn't make me confiscate them, but I was searched very meticulously, and I was very thankful that they let me bring those in. So if you can bring them back, I'll donate them to the Hemp Embassy at the end. So with the magazine, what its focus was a lot on genetics. And John, my partner, John Vergados, he worked in the genetics industry globally and worked with a lot of European cultivars bringing seeds into North America, Canada primarily, creating genetic diversity. So about 5 years ago, the SKUNK Magazine offices were raided. And at the time, SKUNK was doing very well. Magazines in general don't make a lot of money. They're not big money makers. That's not why we're doing it. But the thing that's nice about the magazine at the time was that they were helping a lot of activists. They were bringing a lot of awareness to different issues. They spotlighted on the first child, one of the youngest child at the time, 7 years old, who Brave Michaela, who was diagnosed with leukemia, and she's now in remission and cancer-free. And we covered her. And so John, my partner, was able to go around globally and help a lot of people and bring more eyes to different stories that could be life-changing for others and help build bridges for people. And then at the time, 5 years ago, the skunk offices were raided. And because a lot of trade was happening to power the magazine, again, not making tons of money, but definitely powering the magazine and getting the message out there, it was a mortal wound to the magazine. And so at that time, that's when I met John at a conference. I was a sales and marketing director for Magic Flight, which was a vaporizer that I took globally and expanded their reach into all cannabis relevant countries. And I met him at a conference and we started to collaborate and talk business, and I did a project with him. And you know, it was interesting when I met him because I came into the cannabis industry in a very different way. I'm a herbalist, I'm a mother, I'm a Reiki healer. I ran a yoga studio, I sold organic yoga clothing, I supported organic farming practices, organic textiles, knowing that, you know, cotton is one of the most heavily pesticided crops in the world. If we can have organic cotton, we're going a long way towards helping protect our soils and our waterways. So I was already a woman who I'd consider a Renaissance woman, someone that's devoted to seeing a transformation of how we are working with society. And, you know, like Buckminster Fuller said, I find him very inspiring. He said that, you know, don't fight the existing system. Instead, continue to nourish a new system until the old system is obsolete, because it has been proven to not be as effective. So one of the things that I am devoted to deeply is how can we remember the ancient wisdoms and marry them with our modern technologies. And that to me really is the definition of what a Renaissance means to me. And I see here, as I said at the beginning, you guys are all evidence to me of a Renaissance in Nimbin. Because as you walk around, you can see it's not actually very inconvenient, and it's actually a more beautiful way to live, to not create so much trash in your wake, to have more humanity in your day-to-day dealings. It's actually a more beautiful way to live, and we feel more connected and whole and empowered when we do live that way. So, you know, we're following Buckminster's words. And so when I met John, the magazine was at its lowest point, and we both met on the humanitarian side of things, and I really believed in what John had done because he helped thousands and thousands of growers globally learn how to grow organically. And we can't underestimate the impact that that has. You know, each of us is a supercluster, a universe in our own right, and in our lifetime we'll touch the lives of thousands of people. And in our immediate circles, we'll touch maybe 100 people very closely. Think of the impact that you make. Remember that you do matter. Your presence is important. So when I connected with John, I had to try and figure out how could we save the magazine. And it's been one of the most difficult tests I've ever faced. And the way that I thought about it was, as a woman in business of 20 years and developing different products and incubating different companies, I try and pay attention and listen to nature and listen to how plants work. Look at how root structures work. Look at what really brings vibrant life. And I think about how I can apply those principles to my business practices. And what I found is that I call it new style business. And what it is that for me, it's not business as usual. I often say that if you're practicing business as usual, then you are a part of the problem. And one of the things to create change, we have to be willing to tell the truth. If we're investing in corporations and companies that are poisoning our soils and waterways, then we're a part of the problem. Well, it's not perfect because I'm part of the problem. I drive a car, I use fossil fuels. We know that hemp biofuels could completely transform the planet, but here we are. We're in a very kind of desolate, dark age in its own right. One of the things that kind of gives me consolation is knowing that the last Renaissance took 300 years and that the Dark Age before it took 600 years that they suppressed true science. And so it feels like that to me now when I'm driving in and I see 6 cars pulled over and they're swabbing cannabis users, when I know that the science says, no, this person is perfectly fine to drive, but your greed and your need for money making in the old way that you've been doing things all along is what's driving this. Not science, not intelligence, none of it. And it's an atrocity. And so, you know, one of the things, just to finish up with the magazine is, what I tried to look at was how we're like superclusters. And being here is very special. I'm very thankful to be here because really we're a global family and this is a global renaissance. And I think it's really key that all of the thought leaders and change makers and Renaissance men and women really recognize who they are and own who they are and work together more in every way that they can. And so for me, I've made a commitment that I want to share more of what Australians are going through and many other countries. Because the fact of the matter is every country that I've visited, the people are fighting to heal themselves. They're fighting to simply live a healthy life, and they're faced with a set of asinine laws. Take your pick, they're all disgusting. Even what's happening in California right now. So what I try to do is, I'll take it back to something else for a moment, is that what this all does to us is really sickening, right? Because we're being lied to, we're being stressed, we're being beaten. For me, prohibition is murder. Prohibition is genocide. When I hear the story of the doctor here who was healing a child that was seeing results and almost off of all pharmaceutical medications, then hear that the doctor is arrested and the child is put back on and then falls to ill health, are we living in some bizarre nightmare? I mean, where this, I've heard so many stories of children dying because they couldn't have access to cannabis medicine. Is that not sick? And yet, hear this mindless enforcement of these rules that have no basis in science. It's insulting. And so, you know, what do we do with all this stuff? Because for me, I mean, I think that right now, living in this day and age, on the cusp of a renaissance. I think maybe we're 100 years in. Tell me what you think after the talk. But if we're 100 years into a renaissance, we have to deal with the backlash of just living with this hypocrisy every day. So how do we do it? With depression, anxiety, PTSD. I wrote an article on the fact that, cannabis is not going to heal everything. Cannabis opens a doorway, just like mushrooms or any psychedelic or entheogen, to show us the way that we can walk. Walk whole, walk healed, walk awake, within this dream we call life. But what I wanted to discuss today is just from my heart, kind of what I'm doing to what I like to say. You guys know that program, it's called The Walking Dead. It's a really popular program, and I think it's no mistake that it's very popular, because I think people are seeing themselves, which is very sad. But Walking Dead, here they are pumping us with pharmaceuticals. Here they are, I heard that they arrested 26,000 people, don't quote me on this stat, last year swabbing for marijuana here in New South Wales. That's disgusting. And so here we are, it's like, how the hell can we be the walking, I like to call it the walking healed versus the walking dead. And what I say is they want us to be on their pharmaceuticals, they want us to dumb ourselves down and numb ourselves out with alcohol, they want us to eat crap factory farm food. So that we're zombies. They're happy to cash in, the 1%'s cashing in on the Walking Dead, who are fighting for their homes and their cars and their kids' college education. It's sick. And we're all living with it. So I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about, for me, what's important with the cannabis industry is that we also talk about consciousness, and we also talk about how can we stop being the wounded and move to the healed, because this is where I feel like then we're really taking heed of Buckminster's words, that we truly do have to practice a new way if we want the old way to be obsolete, which means that we have to stop making choices that are dead and start making choices that are healed. And I'm very inspired by this community, because I see you guys doing that everywhere I go, which is very, very uplifting and very, very inspiring. And so one of the things that I've been thinking about a lot in this last year is it really matters what evidence we seek daily. That if we're going to step out of the role of the victim and step out of the role of somebody being the perpetrator, we have to be willing to step out of that whole story altogether. And you guys are doing it. Again, if I can walk to the cafe and get it to go, take my to-go container and get my paper straw and buy my farm-to-table fresh food, I'm right there making a healed choice, and it's actually filled with joy and beauty. And so then at that point, I am no longer in that triangle of victim, perpetrator, rescuer. I'm in an empowered state. I'm making a choice towards my healing, even if it's fraught with difficulty, even if it's not perfect. At least it's in that right direction. So what I've been working on is, how can we seek evidence? How can you seek evidence for what you are building moment by moment? And how can you enjoy more the little bits of good every day that you're adding to the good? And that's what I wanted to invite everybody to do. Because we're all human and we're all imperfect. And I really see us all as dear, dear hearts that we're kind of like, we're bridging the shadow and the light in our world right now. And all of us are important to that. And I think one of the sicknesses in society is that it's made us feel like we're not important. And I think that's sick. I don't know why I'm getting emotional, excuse me. But what I say is, and what I'm attempting to do in business, Because I think if we can do it in business and then we can show them that in a healed way we made money, but we also gave back to our community, we uplifted others, we found ways to infuse philanthropy, we found ways to educate and empower. As we rose, we helped 10 people rise with us. It's not just business as usual anymore. And if we do business as usual, then we're part of the sickness. As long as we can say, hey, at least I'm doing something. What can I do? Listen to your own community and say, what can I do to be a part of the healing and not a part of the disease? And so, in that sense, we can step off the merry-go-round. We can get off of their pharmaceuticals. We can do these things. We can no longer be fully participating in their sick system. And this is how I feel we can beat them. Another writer that I really admire is Arundhati Roy. And she says, on a quiet day, she can hear her breathing. And she talks about the Renaissance that way. That she sees that, like nature and the wisdom of nature, of Gaia, that she's working her magic and it's happening. The magic is being infused back into the system. A new age is dawning. The hippies in the 60s sang of it, the age of Aquarius. Many indigenous cultures have spoke of it. The Mayans, the Hopis, the Aboriginals. I was speaking with an Aboriginal man that was telling me about the understanding of an age that would come when we would remember our ancient wisdom and we would bridge it with our modern technology. So, as a modern woman and a woman of business, I feel that it's the most exciting if we can find ways to have it be something that is also, as I said, creates sacred wealth and sacred livelihood, because that's when I think that we're beating them at their own game. Let's see. I wanted to read you guys a poem from the Dalai Lama. It says, never give up. No matter what is going on, never give up. Develop the heart. Too much energy in your country is spent developing the mind instead of the heart. Develop the heart. Be compassionate, not just to your friends, but to everyone. Be compassionate. Work for peace in your heart and in the world. Work for peace. And I say again, never give up. No matter what is happening, no matter what is going on around you, never give up. I just want to say that, I'm Californian and I've gotten to spend the last 5 years in Canada, and I've gotten to study different cannabis-relevant countries. I've been blessed. And you guys are facing something quite onerous, I feel. I think that there will be a big fight happening over the next several decades for Australians to enjoy cannabis as a medicine as they should. And even right now in California, as I said, the rest of the world thinks that Prop 64 made medicine legal and recreational and it's all fun and all this. No. I worked hard throughout 2016 to sign a number of companies, and I slowly watched a lot of those craft companies die over the last year because they could not jump through the hoops of incessant taxation, being taxed 4 times on the same round of goods. Who the hell can do that? They make it possible, and this is what's happening in California, for big money and business as usual to come in and usurp the industry from the craft. And they put a death choke on craft. So now we're looking at still needing to fight under this guise of legalization, while the lies still are told. And in Canada, it's even worse, I feel, because they really have put in a program that is run by the government, has been filled with the government cronies, politicians, and police. And it's serving the government interest. I read an article where one of the biggest is going all around Europe selling Canadian weed while they're saying there's a crisis because they're not going to be able to meet the demand that the Canadian people have. And this is all on the focus of greed. So I just want to say that a lot of what I spoke about today in terms of being the walking healed, I see as like tools in your toolkit to deal with the regular nauseating, glaring hypocrisy that we're going to have to deal with as we usher in this renaissance together. And we are in it together. So at that time, I want to give a little bit of time to ask questions. Last time we didn't have as much time. And I would welcome you. I have knowledge with business, knowledge with the different laws in different countries. So any question, feel free to ask. I think it's time, if you'd like to start questions. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming.
Thank you very much. That was really wonderful. I've heard both of your talks and some of it. Hi.
Blinded by the light.
I do. I have that effect. No, I'm just kidding. I'm a Canadian citizen, and we're actually living in New Zealand and doing a hemp a production at the moment, but for medicine, so high CBD. We're kind of looking at being able to potentially set up business in Canada, as I'm still a citizen, and being able to export from New Zealand to Canada and potentially come that way. Have you heard of anybody doing that or that kind of situation?
So, to answer that question, the way that they've done the Canadian legalization focus, which is not officially through, it was supposed to come through this year. It may not come through till 2019. There's a lot of discussion going on right now in the news. But the current system says that only licensed producers authorized by the Canadian government can do commerce. Everyone else is illegal. All craft companies are illegal. Just this week, Mota, a very prominent craft brand in Canada with a huge following, has said they'll have to shutter their doors. In order to be a licensed producer, you have to jump through incredible hoops, and you need to raise millions of dollars. And the way that they've just put it down, it's disgusting. This is one of the biggest usurpings of an industry I've ever seen, to be honest. And what they're doing is they've made all the dispensaries, some dispensary has been open for 15 years, serving their community. I saw one next to a chiropractor's office that old ladies were going to, they loved it. Closed, illegal. No, we're not giving you a license. We see you've been there for decades. We don't care. You're still illegal like you were before. The only difference now is that you're still a criminal, but guess what? Your livelihood, we're going to make the money, and we're going to leave you to sit as a criminal. This is the level of hypocrisy that's going on there. So many craft, they have a death choke on craft, different than California, same result. And so the answer is sickening. Is unless you're a licensed producer, your dream would not be able to happen. And I'm interested in having licensed producers that beat them at their own game. I'm in discussions right now of how can we create a cooperative? How can we create a collective of craft farmers that can feed into one licensed producers and say, listen here, you sick fucks, we've just beat your sick system. Because that's what we'd have to do. So hopefully that answered your question.
Hold it, wait for the mic.
It's just the power of the people. just bringing some good heads to the table.
Bring some what?
Good heads to the table, like, you know, brains of the outfit.
Absolutely.
And we've got them. Just been able to, in numbers.
No, I agree. I mean, that's what I did a lot of soul searching this last year and said, what the hell am I doing? Because we'd gotten beaten up being on the front lines trying to protect this magazine. And I just said, well, I don't care anymore. I'm just gonna go ballistic. I'm gonna reach out to every thought leader, every change maker that I know. And if they're already writing, we're republishing your stuff. Republish, get more eyes on it, get more heat, put more logs on the fire. Let's do a fucking blaze. Because these assholes, they're not stopping with their greed. So, I mean, in my mind, yes, I agree with you. And that's what I'm gonna do. And I have my business cards if you wanna talk to me afterward. Obviously, it has to be good writing. But if you're a good writer, invite anybody to reach out to me and share their story.
I had a personal situation in 2000 where I had my own medicinal that I'd made, and I punched on. They hit me with 2 lots of juries. I sacked both of them, and just by manning up, I pulled it off. And the judge at the time, he come in, he kicked the dog that morning. He wasn't happy with me at all. But he told me to go and buy a lottery ticket for every juror that was there. He couldn't believe that I'd pulled it off. It was 15 court cases in 10 months. You just got to get the smarts about yourself, how you present your...
It's true, but you guys, I mean, I feel sorry for you because no Charter of Rights, no Constitution. And Adela, my friend, suggested, you know, finding a way to get, to start to have some kind of semblance of rights, so some kind of something. And so I don't envy what Australians are facing at all, because I think it's really wrong. And you don't have any fire to fight back with other than to get outside of their system. Trade, barter, education, fuck them. Because they're not going to make it easy for you.
Yeah, but saying that tough survive, we're a tough bunch.
Yeah.
Hey, how to us.
Yeah.
And thank you for your emotion that you showed us before.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Have another question?
Hey, Julie.
Hi, David.
What's your opinion about smoking cannabis in the morning with coffee?
Par for the course, a must-have. I don't approach the craziness of the world without that. I need my gram joints, preferably with hash, and my coffee.
Yeah, coffee and cannabis, what a wonderful combination. Thank you so much, Julie. I think we'll wrap it up there. If anyone has any other questions or discussions they'd like to have with Julie, then definitely...